Have you seen the new maintenance guy? Whispered Natalie, my head of housekeeping, leaning across my polished mahogany desk. The one cleaning the bathrooms on the third floor. Rumor is he used to be some hotshot lawyer. I looked up from the quarterly revenue reports, my reading glasses perched on the edge of my nose. You mean Charles? Yes, that's him. Natalie nodded eagerly, her eyes widening. Did you know I hired him, I cut in, my voice even. Personally. Natalie's expression shifted from excitement to confusion. She'd been with the Monarch Hotel for just 6 months, not long enough to know the history, to understand why Charles Miller, former partner at Preston, Hollingsworth and Miller, was now unclogging toilets and scrubbing shower stalls in the luxury hotel I owned. Oh. She hesitated, sensing there was more to the story. Well, he seems overqualified. I removed my glasses, carefully placing them beside my laptop. Everyone deserves a second chance, don't they? My smile didn't reach my eyes. Speaking of chances, how are the preparations for the Richardson wedding coming along? The conversation shifted, the subject of Charles fading as we discussed the hotel's most lucrative booking of the season. But even as I nodded along to Natalie's updates, my mind drifted 3 floors up, where the man who once vowed to love me forever was now on his knees, scrubbing away other people's filth. The man who left me when I was 5 months pregnant with his child. For his secretary. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the way he guarded his phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. All the classic signs were there, but I'd been too busy building my own career, too trusting of the man I'd been with since law school, too focused on preparing for our baby. Eliza? Natalie's voice broke through my thoughts. Should I go with the garden ballroom or the royal suite for the rehearsal dinner? The garden ballroom, I answered quickly. The sunset views will be stunning for their photos. After Natalie left, I found myself staring at the family photo on my desk. Just me and my daughter Lily, now 5 years old, with her father's blue eyes, but thankfully my dark curls and olive complexion. Charles wasn't in the picture. He'd forfeited. That right when he walked out of our home with a suitcase and a weak apology. I never meant for this to happen, he'd said, not meeting my eyes. Amanda and it just happened. I'm sorry, Eliza. I'll always care about you, but I didn't cry. Not then. I sat perfectly still on our living room sofa, one hand resting on my swollen belly, feeling our daughter kick as if she sensed the betrayal. Get out, I'd whispered, my voice deadly calm. Get out before I forget I'm an officer of the court. He'd gone without protest, moving in with Amanda, his 24-year-old paralegal with the perfect blowout and daddy issues. They'd gotten married 3 months after our divorce was finalized, 2 weeks after Lily was born. Charles had shown up at the hospital for her birth, hovered awkwardly for 15 minutes, then disappeared from our lives for nearly 3 years, until his world came crashing down. I glanced at my watch. It was almost time for my daily inspection of the hotel. As owner and general manager of the Monarch, a boutique luxury hotel I'd built from the ground up after the divorce, I took my commitment to excellence seriously. Every day at 2 p.m., I walked the property, checking everything from the gleaming marble floors in the lobby to the thread count of the sheets in our suites. Today, I'd start on the 3rd floor. The elevator doors opened silently onto the plush-carpeted hallway of the 3rd floor. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. Bach, my choice, not Charles. He'd always preferred jazz, claimed it helped him think. I wondered what music played in his head now as he cleaned strangers' bathrooms. Nodded at a passing housekeeper who smiled nervously. The staff respected me, but I knew they also found me intimidating. The Ice Queen, I'd once overheard someone call me. The nickname didn't bother me. Cold had kept me alive, kept me focused, kept me building while my heart was breaking. Room 312 had its maintenance sign out front. I knocked briefly, then used my master key. The bathroom door was ajar, and I could hear the sound of scrubbing. "Maintenance inspection," I announced, my voice professional. The scrubbing stopped. There was a moment of silence, then a sigh. Charles appeared in the doorway, a cleaning cloth in his rubber-gloved hands, perspiration dotting his forehead. At 40, he was still handsome in a patrician way. Strong jawline, once confident blue eyes, thick hair now sprinkled with gray at the temples. His once athletic frame had softened slightly, but he carried himself with the lingering posture of someone who'd spent years commanding rooms. Until he saw me. Then his shoulders slumped slightly. "Eliza," he acknowledged, his voice formal. "Charles," I returned coolly. "How are the fixtures in this room? The shower was giving guests trouble last week." "Fixed," he replied, gesturing to the bathroom behind him. The water pressure issue was resolved. I've also replaced the caulking around the tub. I nodded, stepping past him into the bathroom. It was immaculate, as I knew it would be. Charles had always been thorough, meticulous even. It was what had made him such a good attorney. His attention to detail, his unwillingness to leave any stone unturned. Now those same skills were applied to ensuring no water spots remained on the Italian marble vanity. "Good work?" I said, running a finger along the edge of the spotless counter. "The Stevensons are checking in tomorrow. They're repeat guests, very particular about cleanliness." Charles nodded, eyes downcast. "I'll do another check in the morning." I watched him for a moment, this man I had once loved with every fiber of my being, now standing before me in the navy blue uniform of a hotel maintenance worker, a far cry from the custom-tailored suits he'd once worn. The gold wedding band he'd placed on my finger with such earnest promises was long gone, replaced by a tan line that had eventually faded. My own ring had been sold, the money invested in the Monarch's initial renovation. "Lily has a soccer game this weekend," I said, changing the subject. "Saturday at 10. She's playing forward now." His eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of something. Gratitude? Crossing his face. "I'll be there. Thank you for telling me." I nodded once, then turned to leave, my heels clicking against the tile floor. At the door, I paused. "The sink in 318 has a slow drain. When you're done here." "I'll take care of it," he replied, and I knew he would. The irony wasn't lost on me. Charles, who had once commanded a team of associates and paralegals who had argued cases before the state Supreme Court, now took orders from the woman he'd abandoned. The woman who now signed his meager paychecks. I didn't hire him out of cruelty. I hired him because no one else would. The story of Charles Miller's spectacular fall from grace had been splashed across the business pages of every newspaper in the city. Preston, Hollingsworth, and Miller, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms, co-founded by Charles's grandfather, had imploded spectacularly after an investigation revealed Charles had been embezzling from client accounts. Not for greed, but for desperation. Amanda, it turned out, had expensive tastes. Designer clothes, exotic vacations, a house in the right neighborhood. The salary of even a senior partner couldn't keep up with her demands, especially after the firm hit a rough patch. So Charles had borrowed from client trust accounts, intending to replace the funds before anyone noticed. Someone noticed. The scandal destroyed the firm. Partners scattered to other practices, associates scrambled for new positions, and Charles was disbarred. Criminal charges were avoided only through a settlement that left him penniless. Amanda filed for divorce shortly after, taking what little remained and leaving Charles with nothing but his Harvard law degree, now useless, and a reputation in tatters. I heard about his downfall not through the papers, but from Lily, who came home from her weekend visit with her father confused and upset. "Daddy's apartment is really small now," she'd told me as I tucked her into bed, "and he was crying when he thought I was asleep." That night, I'd lain awake, thinking about karma and justice and the complicated emotions that come with watching someone who hurt you suffer consequences you didn't orchestrate. I didn't feel the satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt a hollow emptiness and concern for my daughter, who loved her father despite his flaws. The next day, I'd called Charles and offered him a job, maintenance staff at the Monarch. Minimum wage plus benefits. He'd been silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. "Why would you do that?" he finally asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Lily needs her father," I replied simply, "and everyone deserves a second chance." What I didn't say was that a small, wounded part of me wanted him to see what I'd built without him. Wanted him to witness my success from the bottom rung of my organization. Wanted him to know that while he'd been destroying himself for a woman who abandoned him when things got tough, I'd been creating an empire with our daughter by my side. He accepted the job. He had no choice. Now, 6 months later, we had settled into an uneasy routine. Charles worked diligently, never complained, and slowly began rebuilding his relationship with our daughter. I ran my hotel with precision and care, maintaining the professional distance that had become my armor. Back in my office, I found a message waiting from my assistant. Marcus Kingsley, the hotel's majority investor and my mentor since law school, wanted to meet for dinner to discuss expansion plans. I smiled slightly. The Monarch had been so successful in its first 3 years that we were now considering opening a second location in Newport. Marcus, who had believed in me enough to back my vision when I was a newly single mother with a half-finished business plan, was eager to scale. "Tell him I'll meet him at Sartre's at 8, I instructed my assistant through the intercom, "and push my 4 o'clock to tomorrow. I need to pick Lily up from school today." An hour later, I was idling outside Briarwood Elementary in my sleek Audi, watching the flood of children pour from the building. Lily spotted my car immediately, her face lighting up as she ran toward me, backpack bouncing against her small frame. "Mommy!" she exclaimed, climbing into the back seat. "I got a star on my math test." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I replied, genuinely proud. "Ice cream to celebrate?" Her cheer was answer enough, and I pulled away from the curb, heading toward her favorite ice cream parlor. In the rearview mirror, I could see her chattering excitedly about her day, her animated expressions so like Charles's, it sometimes took my breath away. At Lily's insistence, we sat outside the ice cream shop at a small wrought iron table, enjoying the mild spring weather. She'd chosen mint chocolate chip, my favorite, not Charles, and was happily describing a playground game in intricate detail when her eyes suddenly widened, looking past my shoulder. "Daddy!" she called, waving enthusiastically. I turned, my spine stiffening involuntarily. Charles stood a few feet away, clearly on his way home from work, still in his uniform. He hesitated, glancing between Lily's excited face and my neutral expression. "Come have ice cream with us," Lily insisted. Charles looked at me, a question in his eyes. After a brief moment, I gave a small nod. He approached slowly, pulling out the third chair at our table. "Hi, Princess," he said to Lily, his tired face transforming with a genuine smile. "Mint chip, huh? Just like your mom." "I got a star on my math test," Lily informed him proudly. "That's my girl," Charles replied, his voice warm with pride. "You must have inherited your mother's brains." I felt a flicker of surprise at the compliment, quickly suppressed. "Would you like some ice cream?" I offered, more for Lily's benefit than his. He shook his head. "Thank you, no. I'm just on my way home." The word home hung between us. Home was once a spacious townhouse in Beacon Hill that we'd purchased together, filled with dreams and plans. Now, home for Charles was a studio apartment above a convenience store in a part of town I would never have let Lily visit alone. "Daddy's fixing our hotel," Lily informed her ice cream cone proudly. "He makes everything work again when it's broken." Charles and I exchanged a glance, the irony of her statement not lost on either of us. "That's right, sweetheart," I said softly. "Everyone's good at something. I like that Daddy works at your hotel," Lily continued, oblivious to the tension. "It's like we're all together." Charles looked down at the table, a flush creeping up his neck. I took a breath, reminding myself that none of this was Lily's fault. "Your dad is very good at fixing things," I told her, my voice gentler than I'd intended. "The guests have noticed how well the rooms are maintained." Charles looked up, surprise evident in his expression. It was true. Several guests had commented on improvements since he'd taken over maintenance, and the Yelp reviews mentioning cleanliness had increased significantly. Charles might have failed at being a husband and a lawyer, but he was proving surprisingly adept at his new role. "Thank you," he said quietly. Lily, finished with her ice cream, announced she needed to use the bathroom. As she skipped inside, Charles and I were left alone at the table, the awkward silence stretching between us. "She seems happy," he finally said. "She is," I confirmed. "The school psychologist says she's adjusted well, all things considered." Charles winced slightly at the implication. "Eliza, Don't," I cut him off. "We're not doing this now. I just want to say thank you," he pressed on. "For the job. For letting me be part of Lily's life. I know I don't deserve either." I studied him, this humbled version of the man I once thought I knew better than myself. "No, you don't," I agreed coolly. "But Lily deserves a father, and I'm not in the business of denying her things she deserves." "Unlike me," he said quietly, looking away. "Unlike you," I confirmed, no satisfaction in the acknowledgement. Before he could respond, Lily bounded back, bright-eyed and sticky-fingered. "Can Daddy come over for dinner?" she asked hopefully. The request was new. Charles had not set foot in my home, the luxury condo I'd purchased after selling our townhouse, since the divorce. The thought of him in my space, seeing the life I'd built without him, made something twist uncomfortably. In my chest, "Not tonight, Princess," Charles answered before I could. "Your mom probably has plans, and I have some things to take care of." He glanced at me gratefully, understanding my hesitation. "Another time," I said, surprising myself. "Maybe next week." Charles's eyes widened slightly. Lily cheered. "I should go," he said, standing. "Lily, I'll see you Saturday for soccer, okay?" After a quick hug for his daughter and a nod in my direction, Charles continued on his way, his shoulders slightly stooped in the ill-fitting uniform, a far cry from the confident stride of the man I'd married. "Mommy, why does Daddy look sad sometimes?" Lily asked as we walked back to the car. I paused, considering how to answer. How do you explain adult consequences to a 5-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that her father chose another woman over his family, then lost everything because of that choice? "Sometimes people make mistakes," I finally said, kneeling to her level. "And sometimes those mistakes have consequences that make them sad. But your daddy loves you very much, and he's working hard to make better choices now. Is that why he works at your hotel? To make better choices?" "Something like that," I replied, standing and taking her hand. "Come on, we need to get home. Mommy has a dinner meeting tonight." Later, as I dressed for my meeting with Marcus, I found myself thinking about the look on Charles's face when I'd acknowledged his good work. Surprise, relief, a flash of the pride he'd once carried so easily. For the first time, I wondered if there was more to my decision to hire him than just providing stability for Lily, or satisfying some subconscious desire for retribution. Perhaps some small, buried part of me wanted to see if he could be redeemed. Dismissed the thought as quickly as it formed, focusing instead on selecting earrings to complement my charcoal gray power suit. Redemption wasn't my business. Running a successful hotel was. And if keeping my ex-husband employed helped maintain that success while providing for my daughter's emotional well-being, then it was simply a practical decision. Nothing more. "Mommy, you look beautiful," Lily declared from my doorway, already in her pajamas, ready for the babysitter. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, smiling at her reflection in the mirror. "Be good for Ms. Jensen tonight, okay?" "I will." She hesitated, then asked, "Are you going on a date?" The question caught me off guard. "No, honey. This is a business. Dinner with Mr. Kingsley. Remember him? He helped Mommy start the hotel." She nodded, clearly relieved. "Good, because I think Daddy still loves you." My hands froze in the act of putting on my earrings. "Lily, that's not... Your father and I are just..." I took a breath, steadying myself. "Your father and I are better as friends now. We both love you very much, but we're not going to be married again." "But he looks at you like Prince Eric looks at Ariel," she insisted, referencing her favorite movie, all sad and wishful. I laughed softly, though something tightened in my chest. "I think that's just your imagination, sweetheart. Now go pick out a book for Ms. Jensen to read to you." As Lily scampered off, I found myself staring at my reflection, seeing not the confident businesswoman I'd become, but the shadows of the woman I'd been. The trusting wife, the expectant mother, the betrayed partner. The woman who had once believed in happily ever after. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, colder, more pragmatic. Someone who didn't have time for sad, wishful looks from men who had already proven their unworthiness. And yet, as I applied a final touch of lipstick, I couldn't quite shake Lily's words, or the memory of Charles's eyes following me as I walked away from the ice cream shop, filled with something that looked remarkably like regret. I pushed the thought aside. I had an empire to build, a child to raise, a future to secure. Charles Miller's regrets were his own to carry, just as the consequences of his actions were his alone to bear. Even if those consequences now included scrubbing toilets in the hotel owned by the woman he'd once promised to love forever. The irony was almost poetic. Almost. Sartre's was exactly the type of restaurant I'd come to prefer since the divorce. Elegant without being showy, expensive without being ostentatious, and exclusive. Enough that people like Amanda would never get a reservation. Marcus was already seated at our usual corner table when I arrived, rising to greet me with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. At 62, Marcus Kingsley remained impressively sharp, his silver hair and tailored suits giving him the distinguished air that had intimidated first-year law students for decades. He'd been my professor, then my mentor, and now my business partner and friend. "Eliza," he greeted me, kissing my cheek. "Stunning as always." "Flattery will get you everywhere," I replied with a smile, taking my seat, "especially if it's followed by good news about the Newport property." Marcus chuckled, signaling the sommelier. "Always straight to business. That's why the monarch is thriving." He waited until our wine was poured before continuing. "The zoning. Commission approved our application. We can begin renovations next month." I felt a surge of satisfaction. The Newport location, a historic mansion overlooking the water, would establish the Monarch as more than just a successful boutique hotel. It would make us a brand. "That's excellent news," I said, raising my glass. "To expansion. To your vision," Marcus countered. "I merely provided capital. You've built something remarkable, Eliza." His praise warmed me. During those dark months after Charles left, when I was heavily pregnant and struggling through the divorce while developing my business plan, Marcus had been my rock. He'd never doubted my ability to succeed, even when I sometimes doubted myself. "Speaking of my vision," I said, setting down my glass, "I've been thinking about staffing for Newport. I want to promote Natalie to manager there. She's ready for more responsibility." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Good choice. And who will replace her at the original location?" I hesitated slightly. I'm considering Andrea from the front desk. She has management experience from her previous hotel. Sounds reasonable, Marcus agreed, then fixed me with a knowing look. And what about your unique maintenance situation? Will you be expanding that arrangement to Newport as well? I should have known Marcus would bring up Charles. Nothing escaped his notice. Charles stays where he is, I said firmly. The Newport property will require a full-time, experienced maintenance supervisor. I took a sip of wine. Besides, I need him where? I can keep an eye on him. For Lily's sake? Marcus asked, his tone careful. Of course, I replied automatically. Just for Lily's sake? He pressed gently. I set down my glass with slightly more force than necessary. What other reason would there be? Marcus held up his hands in surrender. None at all. I'm simply making conversation. But his eyes, kind and perceptive as they'd been since my law school days, told me he wasn't entirely convinced. Marcus had known me too long, had seen me through too much, to be fooled by my practiced composure. How is our disgraced attorney? Performing? He asked, changing tack slightly. Any regrets about hiring him? I considered the question as our appetizers arrived. Surprisingly, no. He's conscientious, thorough. The guests have noticed the improvement in maintenance issues. I shrugged. He knows the consequences of disappointing me again. I imagine he does, Marcus murmured. It's quite the fall from grace, from corner office to cleaning bathrooms in his ex-wife's hotel. Life has a way of balancing the scales, I replied, spearing a scallop with perhaps more vigor than the delicate seafood required. Indeed it does, Marcus agreed. Though I admit, when you first told me you were hiring him, I thought you might be setting yourself up for more pain. I looked up sharply. I'm long past being hurt by Charles Miller. Are you? Marcus asked quietly. Then why keep him so close? Most people wouldn't want their ex working under their roof, especially one who betrayed them so thoroughly. The question hit uncomfortably close to thoughts I'd been avoiding. Why had I really hired Charles? Was it truly just for Lily's stability? Or was there something more complicated at work? Something I wasn't ready to examine too closely? It's practical, I said finally. He needs the money to pay child support. He needs stability to be a good father to Lily. And frankly, he works harder than anyone else would for minimum wage. All very practical reasons, Marcus conceded, not looking entirely convinced. Well, regardless of your motivation, it seems to be working out. The monarch is thriving, Lily is well-adjusted, and your ex-husband is learning humility through honest labor. A tidy arrangement all around? I relaxed slightly as the conversation shifted to the Newport renovation timeline. Marcus didn't bring up Charles again throughout dinner, but his questions lingered in my mind as I drove home later that evening, the city lights blurring slightly through my windshield. Why did I keep Charles so close? Why not let him find work elsewhere, maintain his relationship with Lily from a distance? The answer that came to me as I pulled into my building's garage was unsettling in its honesty. I wanted him to see. I wanted Charles to witness what he'd thrown away. Not just me, but the life we could have had together. I wanted him to know that while he'd been destroying himself for a woman who abandoned him at the first sign of trouble, I had been building something lasting and meaningful. It wasn't just revenge. It was validation. The realization left me uncomfortable as I rode the elevator to my penthouse apartment. I'd always prided myself on my practical nature, my ability to make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. The idea that I might be holding on to Charles out of some need for emotional vindication felt like a weakness I couldn't afford. Ms. Jensen, my regular babysitter, met me at the door with a finger to her lips. "She just fell asleep," she whispered. "She tried to wait up for you." I thanked and paid her, then slipped quietly into Lily's bedroom. My daughter lay sprawled across her bed, dark curls fanned out on her pillow, one arm clutching her favorite stuffed penguin. In sleep, her face was peaceful, unmarked by the confusion of adult complications. Carefully adjusting her blanket, I noticed a piece of paper on her nightstand, a drawing she must have made that evening. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one with long dark hair labeled Mommy, a small one in the middle labeled Me, and a slightly shorter male figure labeled Daddy. Above them, written in Lily's careful kindergarten printing, were the words, "My family." Something tightened in my chest. Despite everything, despite Charles's betrayal and our divorce, Lily still saw us as a unit, still dreamed of us as a family. I gently touched the drawing, then left it where it was, quietly backing out of the room. Sleep eluded me that night, my thoughts circling from the Newport expansion to Marcus's probing questions to Lily's innocent drawing. By the time my alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., I had made a decision. I needed to establish clearer boundaries with Charles, for my sake and for Lily's. The morning routine with my daughter was a well-choreographed dance of breakfast preparation, outfit selection, and last-minute homework checks. By 7:45, I was dropping Lily at school, and by 8:15, I was walking through the lobby of the Monarch, greeting staff with my usual brisk nod. "Morning, Ms. Hayes," called Roger, my longtime doorman. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Indeed," I replied, pausing briefly. "Roger, has Mr. Miller arrived yet?" "Yes, ma'am. Came in about 20 minutes ago. I believe he's checking the pool heating system." I thanked him and headed toward the indoor pool area, rehearsing what I wanted to say. Clear, professional boundaries, a reminder of our roles, perhaps a more structured schedule for his time with Lily. The pool area was deserted this early, the water still and reflective under the soft lighting. I heard Charles before I saw him, the sound of tools clinking coming from the equipment room behind the changing areas. I knocked sharply on the door. "Just a minute," called Charles' voice, followed by the sound of something being set down. When he opened the door, he was wiping his hands on a rag, his uniform already stained with what looked like machine oil. He stopped short when he saw me. "Eliza, is something wrong?" "No," I said, suddenly feeling slightly foolish standing there in my designer suit while he was clearly in the middle of repairs. "I wanted to speak with you about something. When you have a moment." He glanced back at the disassembled pump parts, spread across the floor. "I'm trying to get this fixed before the morning swim class at 10, but..." He checked his watch. "I can spare a few minutes." Charles stepped out, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. In the dim light of the pool area, the contrast between who we had been and who we were now felt especially stark. Once, we'd been equals, both ambitious attorneys, both from good families, both on promising career trajectories. Now, I stood before him as his employer, his success a silent rebuke to his failure. "I wanted to discuss some boundaries," I began, my voice more clipped than I'd intended. "Regarding our arrangement." He nodded slowly. "Okay. First, I think it would be better if you didn't join Lily and me spontaneously, like yesterday at the ice cream shop. It confuses her." "I wasn't planning to," Charles said quietly. "It was coincidence that I was walking by. I wouldn't have stopped if she hadn't seen me." "Nevertheless," I continued, "I think it would be best if we maintain a more structured approach to your time with her." "More structured than the visitation schedule the court already established?" he asked, a hint of his old assertiveness surfacing briefly. "The court schedule addresses when you have her," I clarified. "I'm talking about incidental contact, like yesterday, or the dinner invitation she extended." Charles's expression tightened slightly. "So you're withdrawing the dinner invitation?" I hesitated. Lily had been so excited about the idea. "No," I said finally. "But it needs to be clearly presented as a special occasion, not a regular occurrence. I don't want her getting the wrong idea." "What idea would that be?" Charles asked, his voice carefully neutral. "That we're..." I gestured vaguely between us. That things are changing between us. Are they? The question was soft, almost tentative, his blue eyes searching my face. No, I said firmly. They're not. He nodded once, looking away. Message received. After a brief pause, he added, Was there anything else? I really need to get this pump fixed. I should have left it there. I'd said what I came to say, established the boundaries I felt were necessary, but something, perhaps the defeated slump of his shoulders, or the memory of Lily's drawing, made me continue. Why did you do it, Charles? The question escaped before I could stop it, hanging in the chlorine-scented air between us. He looked back at me, surprise evident in his expression. In 6 months of working at the hotel, in all the brief exchanges during Lily's transfers between us, we'd never discussed the affair, never addressed the betrayal that had shattered our marriage. Does it matter now? He asked quietly. It mattered then, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. It mattered when I was 5 months pregnant and you walked out. It mattered when I had to tell our families, our friends, that my husband had left me for a woman barely out of college. Charles winced, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from our courtship days. I don't have a good answer, Eliza. I thought I was in love with her. In love, I repeated flatly. Enough to throw away 10 years together? Enough to abandon your unborn child? I never abandoned Lily, he protested, a flash of anger, breaking through his careful composure. I was at the hospital when she was born. I've paid child support even when it meant eating ramen for a week. I've never missed a visitation. Except for those 3 months when you were honeymooning with Amanda in Europe, I reminded him coldly. When Lily was learning to walk and you were too busy with your new wife to even FaceTime. The blow landed. Charles looked away, his jaw working. I've made mistakes, he acknowledged quietly. Terrible ones. But I'm trying to make amends now. By fixing pool pumps and unclogging toilets? The words came out more harshly than I'd intended. By being the father Lily deserves, he corrected, meeting my gaze again. By accepting the consequences of my actions, He hesitated, then finished. By trying to show you that I'm not the same man who hurt you. Something shifted in the air between us, some subtle change that made my heart beat faster. For a moment, I saw not the maintenance man in the stained uniform, but the Charles I'd fallen in love with in law school. Earnest, determined, capable of taking responsibility for his mistakes. The moment passed quickly. I stepped back, straightening imperceptibly. Well, we all have to live with our choices, I said briskly. I'll let you get back to work. The Newport investor meeting is using the conference room today, so make sure the air conditioning is functioning properly. It is, he assured me, his tone shifting back to professional. I checked it yesterday. I nodded once, then turned to leave. At the door, I paused. Dinner, I said, not looking back. Thursday at 6:30, for Lily. I'll be there, Charles replied softly. Thank you. I walked away quickly, unsettled by the conversation and my own unexpected reaction to it. This was precisely why I needed boundaries, why I needed to keep our interactions professional and limited. Charles Miller had already proven himself untrustworthy once. I wouldn't give him the opportunity to hurt me again. Back in my office, I threw myself into work, reviewing contractor bids for the Newport renovation and finalizing the agenda for the investor meeting. Around noon, my intercom buzzed. Ms. Hayes? My assistant's voice was hesitant. There's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. I frowned. Who is it? There was a muffled conversation. Then my assistant said, She says her name is Amanda Miller. She says it's about Charles. My blood went cold. Amanda. Charles's second ex-wife, the woman he'd left me for, the catalyst for his professional downfall. What could she possibly want? "Send her in," I said after a moment's hesitation. The door opened, and Amanda Miller swept in, as polished and perfect as I remembered. At 29, she remained striking, tall and slender, with sleek blonde hair, expensively dressed in a way that suggested someone else was footing the bill. Her green eyes assessed me coolly as she took the visitor's chair without waiting for an invitation. "Eliza," she said, as if we were old acquaintances. "You look well." "What do you want, Amanda?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. She smiled, a practiced expression that didn't reach her eyes. Direct as always. "Fine. I'm here about Charles." "What about him?" "I understand he's working for you now," she said, glancing around my office with undisguised curiosity. "As some kind of janitor?" "Maintenance supervisor," I corrected automatically, though Charles's position wasn't nearly that elevated. "Again, what do you want?" Amanda leaned forward slightly. "I want you to fire him." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Excuse me?" "Fire him," she repeated slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Let him go. Terminate his employment. Whatever you want to call it." "Why would I do that?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "Because it's pathetic," Amanda replied with a dismissive wave. "Having your ex-husband scrubbing toilets in your hotel? It makes you look vindictive." I raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I needed to consult you on my hiring practices. Or my reputation." "Look," Amanda said, crossing her legs and adjusting her designer purse on her lap. "I know you think you're being noble, giving him a job when no one else would. But you're actually keeping him from moving on, from rebuilding his life. That's rich, coming from the woman who left him the moment his career imploded," I observed coldly. "The woman who took what little he had left in the divorce. A flash of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed her perfect features. I had my reasons for leaving, but that's not the point." "Then what is the point, Amanda? Why are you really here?" She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across my desk. "My fiancé, Richard Cunningham. He owns Cunningham Construction." I glanced at the card without picking it up. "Congratulations. I fail to see the relevance. Richard needs someone to manage his office," Amanda explained. "Someone detail-oriented, organized, someone who understands contracts. Charles would be perfect." I sat back, studying her with new understanding. "Let me get this straight. You left Charles when he lost everything. Now you're engaged to someone else, and you want me to fire Charles so your new fiancé can hire him?" I shook my head in disbelief. Why would Richard want to hire a disbarred lawyer who embezzled from his clients? Amanda at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Richard doesn't know about that part. I told him Charles had a small legal practice that failed during the recession." She leaned forward again. "Look, the job pays 3 times what you're paying him. He could afford a better apartment, maybe even a small house. It would be better for Lily, too." The mention of my daughter made my jaw tighten. "Don't pretend you care about Lily's welfare. You've never even met her." "That's not fair," Amanda protested. "Charles wouldn't let me near her after she was born. He was obsessed with being the perfect father, always running to your place for visitation." I thought back to those early days after Lily's birth, when Charles would show up for his court-mandated visits, awkward but determined, never bringing Amanda along. I'd assumed it was to spare my feelings. Perhaps there had been more to it. "Regardless," I said dismissively, "Charles's employment situation is between him and me. If your fiancé wants to offer him a job, he's welcome to approach Charles directly." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Don't be dense, Eliza. Charles would never accept the offer if he knew it came from me. That's why I need you to fire him, to force him to look elsewhere." "So you're asking me to do your dirty work," I summarized. To hurt Charles again so you can feel better about yourself. I'm offering him a better opportunity, Amanda insisted. One that would allow him to maintain his dignity. His dignity is not your concern anymore, I replied, my voice like ice. Nor, frankly, is it mine. Charles works for me because he chose to accept my offer. If he wants to leave, he's free to do so at any time. Amanda's expression hardened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Having him under your thumb. The great Charles Miller, reduced to fixing your leaky faucets. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. What I enjoy is running my hotel successfully. Charles is a competent employee who happens to be the father of my child. That's the extent of our relationship. I moved toward the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an investor meeting to prepare for. Amanda rose slowly, gathering her purse. You know, when Charles left you for me, he said you were cold, ambitious to a fault, too focused on your career to really be present in your marriage. She smiled thinly. I see he was right. The barb struck closer than I wanted to admit, but I kept my expression neutral. Goodbye, Amanda. Please don't come back. After she left, I stood at my office window, watching as she crossed the street to a waiting BMW, driven, I presumed, by the unsuspecting Richard Cunningham. Her visit had unsettled me more than I cared to admit, bringing back memories I'd worked hard to suppress. Charles had thought I was cold, too ambitious? The accusations echoed painfully, reminding me of doubts I'd had during those dark days after he left. Had I somehow driven him away? Had my focus on building my career created the space for Amanda to slip in? I pushed the thoughts aside firmly. Charles had made his choice. He'd chosen a younger woman over his pregnant wife. Whatever justifications he'd given Amanda were just that, justifications for inexcusable behavior. And yet, as I turned back to my desk, I couldn't help wondering if there was some truth to her words. Not about Charles. I refused to take responsibility for his betrayal, but about me. Was I keeping Charles at the Monarch partially out of vindictiveness? Was I secretly enjoying his fall from grace more than I wanted to admit? The questions lingered as I prepared for the investor meeting, a nagging doubt beneath my carefully maintained composure. My phone buzzed with a text from Charles. Pool fixed. Conference room AC confirmed working. Checking suite 7 on 12 shower next. Such a mundane message, yet it represented the bizarre reality we now inhabited. The brilliant attorney I'd married, the man who had once argued landmark cases, now reporting on repaired pool pumps and air conditioning units. I started to set the phone down without replying, then changed my mind. Thank you, I typed. About Thursday dinner. Lily wants spaghetti. Still okay for 6:30? His response came quickly. Spaghetti sounds perfect. 6:30 works. Should I bring anything? I hesitated, then typed, just yourself. And maybe ice cream for dessert. Mint chip. Her favorite, came the reply. Or yours. I stared at the message, hearing the echo of a lighter time, when Charles knew all my preferences, all my favorites. When we'd been partners instead of employer and employee, co-parents navigating a minefield of past hurts. Both, I replied simply, then set the phone down and returned to my work, pushing away the unexpected pang of something that felt dangerously like nostalgia. Thursday's dinner would be for Lily's sake. Nothing more. And if Amanda's visit had reminded me of anything, it was that Charles Miller had already proven himself untrustworthy once. I would be a fool to forget that lesson. No matter how competently he fixed pool pumps or how carefully he tread around my boundaries, some mistakes left permanent marks. Some betrayals couldn't be repaired, even by the most skilled maintenance man. I just needed to keep reminding myself of that fact. Thursday arrived with unexpected complications. A pipe burst on the 4th floor, flooding 3 luxury suites and sending the maintenance team, Charles included, into emergency response mode. By mid-afternoon, I was in crisis management meetings with insurance adjusters while simultaneously trying to relocate displaced guests. "We can move the Harringtons to the presidential suite," Natalie suggested as we huddled in my office. "They're celebrating their anniversary, so the upgrade might actually smooth things over." I nodded, adding the note to our rapidly evolving action plan. "And the Miyazakis?" "The Rosemont Hotel has availability. I've already called to arrange a comparable room at our expense." "Good thinking," I approved, glancing at the time. It was already past 4. Lily would be finishing her after-school program soon, and I still had mountains of paperwork to handle before I could leave. "What about the Goldsteins?" "That's the tricky one," Natalie admitted. "They specifically booked with us for the hypoallergenic room options. The Rosemont can't guarantee the same." I drummed my fingers on the desk, weighing options. "Put them in my personal suite on the top floor." The decision was practical, if inconvenient. My suite was kept immaculate and used the same hypoallergenic protocols as our specialized guest rooms. "I'll stay at home tonight." Natalie looked surprised. "Are you sure? We could try the Bellevue." "The Goldsteins are repeat guests who booked 6 months in advance for their daughter's medical treatment at Boston Children's," I cut in. "They get the suite. Make it happen." She nodded, making a note. "Charles estimates the repairs will take at least 2 days. We'll need to block those rooms through the weekend." The mention of Charles reminded me of our dinner plans. With the day's chaos, I hadn't had time to consider how we were going to handle the canceled dinner at my condo. "Speaking of Charles," I said carefully, "how is he handling the situation?" "Like a pro, actually," Natalie replied, sounding impressed. "He identified the issue, shut off the water main before it could spread further, and organized the cleanup crew. He's been working nonstop since it happened." I wasn't surprised. Crisis management had always been one of Charles's strengths as an attorney. His ability to remain calm and methodical under pressure had served him well in the courtroom. Apparently, those skills transferred to plumbing emergencies as well. "I need to pick up Lily," I said, standing and gathering my things. "You have my cell if anything else arises. I'll check in later." As I headed for the elevator, I texted Charles. "Heard you've been handling the flood situation well. Given the circumstances, we'll need to reschedule dinner." The response came as I was getting into my car. "Understood. Lily will be disappointed, but these things happen. When would you like to reschedule?" I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. The practical solution would be to postpone until the crisis was fully resolved. But I could already imagine Lily's disappointed face when I told her dinner with her father was canceled. After a moment's consideration, I typed, "Actually, given that you'll be working late and I need to stay with Lily, what if we brought dinner? To you? Pizza at the hotel around 7? His reply was immediate. "Are you sure? I'll be a mess." "Lily won't mind," I responded. "She'll think it's an adventure." Loading dock break room at 7. It wasn't until I was pulling up at Lily's school that I questioned my decision. Bringing my daughter to have dinner with her maintenance worker father in a hotel break room was hardly the structured, boundary-respecting scenario I'd envisioned. But the alternative, seeing Lily's crestfallen expression when I canceled, seemed worse somehow. "Mommy!" Lily called, running toward me with her usual enthusiasm, her backpack bouncing. "Is Daddy coming for spaghetti tonight?" I crouched to her level, smoothing a wild curl from her forehead. "There's been a change of plans, sweetheart. There was an emergency at the hotel. A big water pipe broke, and Daddy has to work late to fix it." Her face fell immediately, blue eyes filling with disappointment. "So no dinner with Daddy?" "Actually," I said, taking her hand as we walked to the car, "I thought we could bring dinner to Daddy instead, like a picnic, but at the hotel. Would that be okay?" "A picnic at the hotel?" Lily's expression brightened instantly. "With pizza?" "If that's what you'd like," I agreed, helping her into her booster seat. "Can we bring Daddy's favorite?" With the pepperoni and mushrooms? She asked eagerly. I paused, surprised that Lily knew this detail about Charles. Has Daddy ordered that when you've had weekends together? Uh-huh, she nodded. He says it reminds him of law school and studying with you. He says you guys used to get pizza every Thursday night when you had big tests coming up. Something tightened in my chest at this casual revelation. Not just that Charles still ordered the same pizza after all these years, but that he'd shared the memory with Lily. That he'd connected our daughter to a past where her parents had been partners, not adversaries. Then pepperoni and mushroom it is, I said lightly, starting the car. After a quick stop at home for Lily to change out of her school clothes, we picked up pizza and headed to the Monarch. I'd called ahead to have the loading dock area prepared. Normally, a utilitarian space where deliveries were received, but with a small break room where staff sometimes took meals. Ms. Hayes, Roger the doorman looked surprised to see me return with Lily and pizza boxes. Everything all right with the flood situation? As well as can be expected, I replied. We're having an impromptu dinner with the maintenance team. Morale. Boost during the crisis. It wasn't entirely untrue. My presence, and more importantly pizza, would likely boost morale among the staff dealing with the emergency. Roger nodded approvingly. That's very thoughtful. They've been working non-stop up there. The loading dock was unusually busy for evening, with industrial fans and wet vacuums being brought in through the service entrance. I led Lily through the back hallways, nodding at surprised staff members as we passed. The break room had been hastily tidied, I noticed as we entered. The usual scatter of coffee cups and newspapers had been cleared away, and someone had placed a small vase of flowers, probably borrowed from the lobby arrangements, on the laminate table. Daddy, Lily called, spotting Charles as he entered, from the opposite door. She launched herself at him, unconcerned by his soaked uniform or the smudges of dirt on his face. Charles caught her, lifting her into a hug while being careful not to get her too dirty. Hey, Princess! What a surprise! We brought pizza, she announced proudly. Your favorite kind. Charles looked over Lily's head at me, a question in his eyes. I shrugged slightly, setting the pizza boxes on the table. I told her it was like a picnic, I explained. An adventure. The best kind of adventure, Charles agreed, setting Lily down. Let me just wash up a bit. He disappeared briefly into the small attached bathroom, returning with his face and hands clean, though his uniform remained damp and stained. Despite this, he looked more energized than I'd expected after hours of emergency work. Pepperoni and mushroom, he observed as I opened the pizza boxes. You remembered. Lily remembered? I corrected. She said you order it on your weekends together. Something like embarrassment crossed his features. Ah. Yes, I guess I'm predictable. He pulled out a chair for Lily, then hesitated before sitting across from me. Thank you for this. You didn't have to. It's fine, I interrupted, not wanting to examine my motivations too closely. Lily was looking forward to dinner with you. This way, everyone gets what they need. She sees you, you keep working on the flood, and I get to check on the situation in person. Charles nodded, accepting my practical explanation without comment. He helped Lily get a slice of pizza onto her paper plate, then took one for himself. So, Princess, how was school today? As Lily launched into an elaborate story about playground politics and art class, I found myself observing the easy rapport between father and daughter. Despite his prolonged absence during her infancy, despite the limited time they spent together now, Charles had clearly worked to build a genuine connection with Lily. He listened attentively, asked questions that showed he remembered details from previous conversations, and seemed genuinely delighted by her animated retelling of 5-year-old drama. It was a side of Charles III rarely witnessed during our brief interactions at pickup and drop-off. In those moments, he was always carefully formal, clearly aware of my watching eyes. Here, absorbed in conversation with Lily, he seemed lighter. More like the man I'd fallen in love with years ago. Ms. Hayes? A voice interrupted my musings. I looked up to see Andrea from the front desk hovering in the doorway. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Goldsteins have arrived, and they have some questions about the accommodations." I nodded, wiping my hands on a napkin and standing. "I'll be right there." To Charles and Lily, I added, "Duty calls. Lily, stay with Daddy, okay? I'll be back in a few minutes." As I followed Andrea toward the lobby, I heard Lily asking Charles if he could show her the big broken pipe, and his gentle explanation that the flood zone wasn't safe for little explorers. The Goldsteins were understanding about the situation once I explained personally and showed them to my private suite. Mrs. Goldstein, a slender woman with kind eyes, expressed genuine gratitude for the accommodation. "Your maintenance staff has been wonderful," she told me as I helped them settle in. "Especially that gentleman. Charles, I think? He made sure all our medical supplies were safely moved and took extra care with Emma's special pillows." I nodded, unsurprised yet still somehow pleased by the praise. "I'm glad to hear it. Please don't hesitate to contact me directly if you need anything else during your stay." By the time I returned to the break room, Lily had convinced Charles to draw a diagram of the hotel's plumbing system on a paper napkin, complete with a dramatic X marking disaster spot. "And then the water went whoosh," she was saying excitedly, gesturing with her hands, "and Daddy saved everybody." "Well, not exactly," Charles corrected gently. "It was a team effort, and nobody was in any real danger, just some wet carpets and unhappy guests." "Still a hero," Lily insisted stubbornly. Charles caught my eye as I sat back down, a hint of embarrassment in his expression. "I've been trying to explain that fixing a pipe hardly qualifies as heroism, but she's not buying it." "She's 5, I pointed out, reaching for another slice of pizza. "At that age, anyone who makes water do what they want is basically a superhero." "Fair point," he conceded with a small smile. The moment felt oddly comfortable, the three of us, sharing pizza in this humble break room, discussing plumbing disasters as if we were any normal family having dinner together. It was disconcerting how easily we'd fallen into this dynamic, how natural it felt despite everything that had happened between us. "Mr. Miller?" A maintenance worker appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but we've got a problem with the dehumidifiers on 4. They keep tripping the breaker." Charles nodded, immediately shifting back to professional mode. "I'll be right there." He turned to Lily, crouching to her level. "Duty calls, Princess. I've got to go help fix another problem." "Can I watch?" she asked hopefully. "Not this time," he said, tapping her nose gently. "But how about I tell you all about it this weekend? We can draw more diagrams." "Promise?" "Promise." He gave her a quick hug, then stood, glancing at me. "Thank you for dinner. It was—" He hesitated, seemingly searching for an appropriate word. "Nice," he finished simply. "We should let you get back to work," I said, gathering the pizza boxes. "Come on, Lily, time to go home." "Already?" she protested. "Daddy has important work to do," I reminded her. "And you have bath time and a bedtime story waiting at home." As Charles turned to leave with the other maintenance worker, Lily called after him, "Daddy, you forgot something." He turned back, eyebrows raised in question. "You forgot to kiss Mommy goodbye," Lily said matter-of-factly, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. The silence that followed was deafening. Charles froze, his expression a mixture of shock and something unreadable. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, mortified by my daughter's innocent assumption. "Lily," I began carefully, "Daddy and I don't—" "It's okay, Princess," Charles interrupted, gently, recovering his composure. "Grown-ups don't always kiss goodbye, even when they're friends." "But you kiss me goodbye," she pointed out with impeccable 5-year-old logic. "That's different," he explained, crouching to her level again. "You're my daughter and I love you very much. Mommy and I care about each other because we're your parents, but we show it in different ways, like by working together to make sure you're happy and healthy. Lily considered this explanation, her small brow furrowed in concentration. Like bringing pizza? Exactly like bringing pizza, Charles agreed, relief evident in his voice. Now I really do have to go fix those machines. This time when he left, Lily didn't protest, though she watched him go with a thoughtful expression that worried me slightly. Children her age were concrete thinkers, and despite Charles's careful explanation, I suspected she was still processing her own version of our complicated family dynamic. "Ready to go home, sweetheart?" I asked, taking her hand. As we walked through the hotel's back corridors, Lily unusually quiet beside me, I found myself replaying the awkward moment in the break room. Charles had handled it well. Better than I had, if I was being honest. His explanation had been age-appropriate and clear without being dismissive of her feelings. It reminded me of something my mother had once said after meeting Charles for the first time. That young man will make a wonderful father someday. She'd been right, despite everything else that had gone wrong. "Mommy," Lily said suddenly as we reached the car, "did you and Daddy used to kiss goodbye?" I paused in the act of opening her door, caught off guard by the question. "Yes," I admitted, after a moment. "When we were married, we did. Do you miss it?" The question, so innocent yet so pointed, made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Did I miss kissing Charles goodbye? Did I miss the casual intimacy of our married life, the morning coffees, the shared jokes, the comfortable silences? Sometimes, I answered honestly, helping her into her booster seat. But life changes, sweetheart. People change. Daddy says you're the smartest person he knows, Lily informed me as I buckled her in. He says you can do anything. I stilled, surprised by this revelation. He said that? Uh-huh. When I told him I wanted to be like you when I grow up. He said that was a very good idea because you're smart and brave and you build beautiful things. I closed her door, taking a moment to collect myself before getting into the driver's seat. The idea that Charles spoke about me this way to our daughter, with respect, even admiration, was unexpected. I'd assumed he harbored resentment toward me for his current position, for the power imbalance between us. To learn that he was encouraging Lily's admiration of me instead felt significant, somehow. The drive home was quiet, Lily eventually nodding off in her booster seat despite the early hour. The day's excitement combined with a full stomach had overcome her usual evening energy. As I carried her sleeping form into our condo, I reflected on the strange dinner we'd just had. How something that should have been awkward and uncomfortable had instead felt almost right. After tucking Lily into bed, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto the balcony of my penthouse apartment. The city lights spread out below me, a testament to how far I'd come since those dark days after Charles left. I'd built this life for myself and Lily, successful, comfortable, independent. I didn't need Charles Miller or his approval, so why did his praise relayed through our daughter make me feel so oddly vulnerable? My phone buzzed with a text. "Charles, dehumidifier crisis averted. Thank you again for dinner. It meant a lot to Lily." Just to Lily? I found myself wondering, then immediately chastised myself for the thought. What Charles felt or didn't feel was irrelevant. Our relationship was strictly co-parental and professional now. "You're welcome," I typed back. She enjoyed the adventure. I hesitated, then added, "Good work today with the flood response. The Goldsteins mentioned you specifically." His reply came quickly. "Just doing my job." The humility in those 4 simple words struck me. The Charles I'd been married to would have basked in the praise, would have elaborated on exactly how he'd solved the problem. This Charles, the one who had lost everything and was starting over from the bottom, seemed to have developed a modesty that was entirely new. "Well, you did it well," I responded, surprising myself with the voluntary compliment. After a moment's hesitation, I added, Lily said you told her I'm the smartest person you know. This time, his reply took longer, and I could almost picture him considering his response carefully. It's the truth, he finally wrote. You've always been brilliant. I just didn't always appreciate it properly. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. This wasn't the dynamic we'd established over the past 6 months. We talked about Lily, about maintenance issues, about schedules and logistics. We didn't venture into the territory of personal reflections, or, God forbid, regrets. Before I could decide on a reply, another message came through. I should get back to work. Good night, Eliza. Good night, I responded simply, setting my phone down and taking a long sip of wine. The next morning, I arrived at the Monarch earlier than usual, eager to check on the flood recovery progress. The industrial fans were still running on the 4th floor, but the water had been completely extracted and the damaged materials were being removed efficiently. Morning, Ms. Hayes, called Peterson, one of the maintenance staff. Looking for Charles? He's checking the electrical in 412. I blinked, surprised by the assumption. Actually, I'm just doing my rounds. How is the recovery progressing? Ahead of schedule, Peterson replied. Charles worked through the night to make sure we didn't fall behind. Man's a machine. I frowned slightly. Through the night? He didn't go home? Nah, said he wanted to monitor the dehumidifiers personally. Caught a couple hours on the break room couch, I think, but that's it. I nodded, processing this information as I continued my inspection. Charles had always been dedicated, but working through the night seemed excessive, even for a crisis situation. Was he trying to prove something? And if so, to whom? I found him in room 412, testing electrical outlets with a small device, his uniform rumpled and his eyes shadowed with fatigue. He looked up as I entered, straightening slightly. Eliza, good morning. I hear you worked through the night, I said without preamble. He shrugged, returning to his testing. Seemed prudent. The dehumidifiers needed monitoring, and the night cleaning staff needed direction on handling the wet areas. We have a night manager for that, I pointed out, and other maintenance staff. I'm the most familiar with the system, he replied, not meeting my eyes. It made sense for me to stay. I studied him, noting the exhaustion evident in his posture despite his attempts to appear alert. You have Lily this weekend, I reminded him. You can't properly care for her if you're exhausted from working 24-hour shifts. This got his attention. He looked up, a flash of something, defensiveness, crossing his features. I would never compromise my time with Lily. I'll get proper rest before picking her up tomorrow. See that you do, I said, more sharply than I'd intended. Then, softening slightly, I added, the staff says you've been instrumental in managing this crisis. That's commendable, but don't overdo it. A hint of surprise crossed his face at the qualified praise. Thank you. I'm just trying to do my job well. The simple statement held echoes of our conversation the night before, reminding me of his unexpected text about my intelligence. Suddenly, I wanted to ask him about it, about what had changed, about when he had started seeing me as someone to be admired rather than resented. Instead, I said, the Newport investors were impressed with our emergency response protocol. They're fully committed to moving forward with the expansion timeline. That's excellent news, Charles replied, genuine pleasure in his voice despite his fatigue. The Monarch deserves to grow. You've built something remarkable here, Eliza. The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught me off guard. Thank you, I said after a moment. That's kind of you to say. Not kind, just accurate. He turned back to his testing, seemingly unaware of the impact of his words. I stood there a moment longer, watching him work methodically despite his obvious exhaustion. This man, This humbled, hard-working version of my ex-husband was increasingly difficult to reconcile with the selfish, arrogant man who had abandoned me for his young mistress. People could change. I knew this intellectually, but seeing it manifested in Charles, witnessing his transformation from entitled partner in a prestigious law firm to dedicated maintenance worker who pulled all-nighters to protect my investment, it was unsettling. It forced me to reconsider narratives I'd held as absolute truth. "Take a break," I said finally. "That's not a suggestion. It's an instruction from your employer. 2 hours minimum. Use the executive lounge on the mezzanine. It's quiet there. I'll have food sent up." He looked up, clearly ready to protest, but something in my expression must have convinced him of my seriousness. "All right," he conceded. 2 hours. But then I need to finish the electrical inspections. "They'll wait," I assured him. "The rooms are blocked through Sunday anyway." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "Eliza?" I paused in the doorway, looking back. "Thank you," he said simply. "For the dinner last night. For bringing Lily, it meant a lot." He hesitated, then added quietly, "To both of us." I nodded once, not trusting myself to respond properly, and continued on my way. Something was shifting between us, something I wasn't entirely comfortable with yet couldn't seem to prevent. The careful boundaries I'd established were blurring, complicated by impromptu pizza dinners and midnight texts and unexpected compliments. As I headed for my office, I realized with sudden clarity that I needed to make a decision. Either reinforce those boundaries firmly, keep Charles at the professional distance that safety demanded, or acknowledge that perhaps, just perhaps, the man scrubbing toilets in my hotel was no longer the same man who had broken my heart 6 years ago. Both options felt equally terrifying. Saturday morning arrived clear and crisp, a perfect early spring day for Lily's soccer game. I arrived at the community field 20 minutes early, setting up my folding chair on the sidelines among the other parents. Most were familiar faces by now, the same group of mothers and fathers who showed up each weekend to cheer on their kindergartners' chaotic attempts at organized sports. "Eliza!" called Patricia Wheeler, mother of Lily's teammate Sophie. "I saved you a spot." I waved in acknowledgement, making my way through the cluster of chairs. Patricia was one of the few parents from Lily's school with whom I'd developed something. Approaching friendship, a straight-talking pediatric surgeon whose no-nonsense approach to life I appreciated. "Is Charles coming today?" she asked as I settled beside her. Patricia was also one of the few people who knew the full story of my relationship with my ex-husband, including his current employment at my hotel. "He should be," I replied, scanning the parking lot. "He never misses Lily's games." Patricia hummed non-committally, following my gaze. "And how is that whole situation working out? Still enjoying the poetic justice of having him scrub your toilets?" I turned to her, ready to deliver my standard response, that it was a practical arrangement benefiting everyone involved, nothing more. Instead, I found myself saying, "It's evolving." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "Evolving? That sounds intriguing." "Not in the way you're thinking," I clarified quickly. "Just complicated." "Complicated how? Has he messed up at work? Been late for visitation?" "No, nothing like that. He's been—" I searched for the right word. "Exemplary, actually." Patricia gave me a knowing look. "Ah, and that's the problem, isn't it? Hard to keep hating someone who refuses to be hateable." I was saved from responding by the arrival of the man himself. Charles approached from the parking lot, looking more rested than when I'd last seen him at the hotel. He'd traded his maintenance, uniform for jeans and a casual button-down shirt, a look that reminded me uncomfortably of our early dating days. He spotted me and raised a hand in greeting, his pace slowing slightly as he noticed Patricia beside me. I could read the hesitation in his body language, uncertainty about whether he should join us or find another spot to watch the game. Patricia, observing this silent exchange, rolled her eyes. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered, then called, "Out. Charles, I saved a spot for you too." He approached cautiously. "Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. That's very kind." "Patricia, please," she corrected. "We've been watching these kids run in the wrong direction for 3 months now. I think we're on a first-name basis." Charles smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders as he unfolded his chair next to mine. "Fair point. How's Sophie doing with her dribbling? Lily mentioned she's been practicing." "Better than last week," Patricia replied. "At least now she occasionally hits the ball rather than just running alongside it." The easy conversation surprised me. I hadn't realized Charles had developed rapport with the other parents during these weekend games. Given his situation, the public downfall, the divorce, the humble new job, I'd assumed he would have kept to himself, minimizing potential awkwardness. "The flood situation resolved?" he asked me quietly as Patricia waved to another arriving parent. "Almost entirely," I replied. "The restoration company says the carpets should be done by tomorrow evening. We'll be able to rebook those rooms by Monday." He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Good. I was worried about the baseboard damage, but the quick drying prevented any mold issues. It was such a mundane conversation, the kind any hotel manager might have with a maintenance worker. Yet the normality of it, the professional respect underlying our exchange, felt significant somehow. "Oh, look, here come our future World Cup champions," Patricia announced as the children began flooding onto the field in their 2 large uniforms, looking like a swarm of colorful ants from a distance. Lily spotted us immediately, waving enthusiastically from the field. When she saw Charles sitting beside me, her entire face lit up with a joy so pure it was almost painful to witness. She jumped up and down, pointing us out to her teammates, her whole family together, watching her play. "She looks happy," Charles observed softly, returning Lily's wave. "She is," I agreed. Then, after a hesitation, "She likes when we're both here." Charles glanced at me, something careful in his expression. "I've been thinking about what she said at the hotel, about us kissing goodbye." I tensed slightly. Children her age don't understand divorce well. It's normal for her to have some confusion. It's more than confusion," he interrupted gently. "It's hope, Eliza. She's hoping things might change between us." The blunt assessment hung in the air between us as the children began their warm-up exercises on the field, running in haphazard circles under their coach's guidance. "We need to be consistent," I said finally. "Clear about the reality of our situation. It's kinder in the long run." "And what is the reality of our situation?" Charles asked, his voice low enough that Patricia, now chatting with another parent, couldn't hear. "Employee and employer? Co-parents? Former spouses? All of the above?" I turned to face him directly, struck by the earnestness in his expression. "Why does it need additional definition? What we have is working." "Is it?" he challenged. Quietly, "Because lately it feels like something's shifting, Eliza. And I don't think I'm imagining it." Before I could respond, the coach's whistle blew, signaling the start of the game. Lily's team was first on the field, our daughter taking up her position, with the serious concentration of a child determined to impress. "This isn't the place for this conversation," I said, turning my attention determinedly to the field. Charles respected my deflection, focusing on the game as Lily's team made their first chaotic attempt to move the ball downfield. For the next 45 minutes, we were just 2 parents cheering for our daughter, celebrating her small victories and encouraging her through minor setbacks. Lily scored a goal in the second half, her first of the season, and her reaction was immediate. She looked directly at our section of the sidelines, her face a sunburst of pure joy, clearly seeking out both her parents' approval in a single glance. Without thinking, I reached for Charles's hand in celebration, squeezing it instinctively as we both stood cheering. It wasn't until I felt him squeeze back that I realized what I'd done. The casual intimacy of the gesture, So automatic it had bypassed all my carefully constructed barriers. I released his hand quickly, but the moment had happened. More importantly, Lily had seen it, her smile growing impossibly wider before she raced back to position. "Sorry," I murmured, fixing my eyes straight ahead. "Reflex." "Don't apologize," Charles replied, his voice holding something I wasn't ready to identify. It was nice. The game ended with Lily's team winning by a narrow margin, more due to enthusiastic chaos than actual skill. As the children dispersed to their parents, Lily ran full speed toward us, launching herself first at Charles, then at me. "Did you see my goal?" she demanded breathlessly. "Did you see it?" "We saw it," I assured her, smoothing back her sweaty hair. "It was fantastic, sweetheart." "The best goal of the game," Charles agreed, high-fiving her. "Maybe the season." Patricia approached, Sophie in tow. "Congratulations, star forward," she said to Lily. "That was quite a kick." "Thank you, Dr. Fau." "Wheeler," Lily beamed. "Did you see my parents holding hands when I scored?" The innocent question landed like a bomb in our small circle. Patricia's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. Sophie looked confused, and Charles became suddenly very interested in folding his chair. "I think that's called parental pride," Patricia said smoothly, coming to our rescue. "Sophie, why don't we get your water bottle? I think you left it by the bench." As they walked away, I crouched to Lily's level, determined to address the misunderstanding immediately. "Lily, sweetheart, about what you just said." "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" she interrupted, already moving on in the way only children can. "Please? All three of us?" I glanced at Charles, who shrugged slightly, leaving the decision to me. "Sure," I heard myself saying. "Ice cream sounds perfect for a game-winning goal." Lily cheered, any thoughts of hand-holding apparently forgotten as she skipped toward the parking lot, leaving Charles and me to gather our things. "You don't have to come if it's uncomfortable," he said quietly as we folded our chairs. "I can. Take her for ice cream and drop her at your place after." "It's fine," I replied, surprising myself with the realization that it actually was. "It's just ice cream." But as we walked to our separate cars, I knew it wasn't just anything. Something fundamental had shifted between us, and pretending otherwise was becoming increasingly difficult. The ice cream shop was crowded with Saturday patrons, families and couples enjoying the beautiful spring day. We found a small table outside, Lily happily situated between us with her mint chocolate chip cone. "My two favorite people and my favorite ice cream," she declared contentedly. "This is the best day ever." Charles caught my eye over her head, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. In that moment, with the sunshine warming my skin and my daughter's happiness radiating between us, I could almost forget everything that had happened. The betrayal, the divorce, the years of anger and resentment. Almost. "I need to check my messages," I said abruptly, pulling out my phone as a shield against dangerous nostalgia. "Work emergency." "On a Saturday?" Lily protested, ice cream dripping down her fingers. "Hotels don't take weekends off, sweetheart," I reminded her, scrolling through emails that could have easily waited until Monday. Charles handed Lily a napkin, helping her clean up the melting ice cream. "Your mom's hotel is very important," he explained. "Many people depend on her." I glanced up, expecting to find sarcasm or bitterness in his expression, but saw only genuine respect. It was disarming, this consistent pattern of Charles acknowledging my success without resentment, praising my accomplishments to our daughter without qualification. "Actually," I said, putting my phone away, "nothing that can't wait. Tell me more about your goal, Lily. How did it feel when you kicked it?" We spent the next hour in surprisingly easy conversation, the three of us navigating this strange new territory of amicable co-parenting. By the time Lily had finished her ice cream and used approximately 30 napkins to clean her sticky hands, she was yawning despite the early hour. "Soccer is exhausting," Charles observed as Lily leaned against him, eyelids drooping. "I think someone might need a nap before our afternoon adventures." "I don't need a nap," Lily protested, the effect somewhat undermined by her barely stifled yawn. "I'm not a baby." "Even grown-ups need naps sometimes," I told her, gathering our trash, especially after scoring amazing goals. "Your mom's right," Charles agreed, standing and lifting Lily into his arms with practiced ease. She immediately rested her head on his shoulder, another protest dying on her lips as her eyes fluttered closed. "Let's get you home for a quick rest, then we can go to the Science Museum as planned." I led the way to my car, opening the back door so Charles could secure Lily in her booster seat. She was almost asleep already, the excitement of the morning, catching up with her. "I'll follow you to your place," Charles said as he buckled her in. "Help get her settled before taking her for the rest of our weekend." I nodded, getting into the driver's seat. The arrangement made sense. Lily's weekend bag was already packed and waiting at my condo. Yet as Charles closed the back door gently and headed for his own car, I felt an unexpected ripple of something like disappointment. At the condo, Lily roused just enough to walk inside with assistance, Charles holding one hand and me the other. The image we presented, a family returning home together, was so achingly normal, it made my chest tight. "I'll just get her settled for a quick nap," I said, guiding Lily toward her bedroom. "Her weekend bag is on the counter. Help yourself to coffee if you want." 10 minutes later, Lily was sound asleep in her bed, clutching her stuffed penguin. I returned to the kitchen to find Charles standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a cup of coffee in his hand. "She's out," I reported, pouring myself a cup. "Probably for at least an hour if you want to run an errand and come back." "I'm fine waiting," he replied, turning from the window. "If that's okay with you." I nodded, joining him at the window. For a moment, we stood in silence, looking out at the Boston skyline, the familiar landscape that had been the backdrop to our relationship from its earliest days. "Your new company secured the Reynolds account," Charles said suddenly. I turned, to him, surprised. "How did you know that?" "I still have friends in the legal world," he explained. "Word gets around when a boutique firm takes a major client from an established one." He smiled slightly. "I'm not surprised. Your hospitality company consulting idea was always brilliant." I blinked, taken aback both by his knowledge of my side business and his praise of it. "I didn't think you paid attention to my professional ventures," I admitted. "I've always paid attention, Eliza," he said quietly, "even when you thought I didn't." The statement hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't sure how to process. Had he been following my career all along, even during our marriage when I'd felt my ambitions were secondary to his? "Why did you accept the job at the Monarch?" I asked abruptly. "The real reason, not the practical necessities you mentioned before." Charles seemed to consider the question carefully, taking a sip of his coffee before answering. "At first, because I had no choice. I needed work, and no one else would hire me." He paused, his gaze returning to the window. "But I stayed because it felt right somehow. Like penance, maybe. Or a chance to be in your orbit again, even if it was at the bottom looking up." "Penance," I repeated. "For the affair?" "For everything?" he clarified. "For not seeing what was in front of me until it was gone. For choosing something fleeting over something real." He turned to face me directly. "For hurting the one person who had always believed in me, even when I didn't deserve." I set my coffee cup down carefully, unnerved by his candor. "You don't need to say these things, Charles. It's ancient history." "Is it?" he challenged gently. "Because it doesn't feel like history when I'm fixing a leak in room 212 and remembering how we used to talk about our future, It doesn't feel ancient when Lily draws pictures of us as a family, and I have to explain why it can't be reality. You made that choice, I reminded him, my voice sharper than intended. You chose Amanda over your pregnant wife. You walked out, not me. I know, he acknowledged, no defense in his tone. It was the worst mistake of my life, and I've made some spectacular ones. The simple admission, delivered without qualification or excuse, caught me off guard. In all our interactions since the divorce, we'd never had this conversation. Never directly addressed the affair or its aftermath beyond practical considerations involving Lily. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, crossing my arms protectively. Charles set his own cup down, taking a step closer. Because I think you need to hear it. Because I need to say it. And because something is changing between us, Eliza, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Nothing is changing, I insisted, even as a voice in my head accused me of lying. We're co-parenting more effectively, that's all. Is that why you reached for my hand today? He asked softly. Why you brought pizza to the hotel? Why you've started texting me about things that have nothing to do with Lily or maintenance issues? Each example hit home, undeniable evidence of the subtle shifts in our relationship. Still, I held firm to my denial. You're reading too much into basic courtesy. Am I? Charles took another step closer, close enough now that I could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. Then tell me to stop. Tell me there's absolutely no chance for us, that you'll never feel anything for me again, and I'll respect that. I'll be the best co-parent and the best maintenance supervisor I can be, and nothing more. The challenge hung in the air between us, his gaze steady on mine. I opened my mouth to say exactly what he'd asked, to definitively close the door on any possibility beyond our current arrangement. The words should have come easily after 6 years of anger and hurt. Instead, I heard myself asking, "And if I don't tell you to stop?" Something like hope flickered across his face. Then maybe we acknowledge that people can change. That mistakes, even terrible ones, don't have to define the rest of our lives. That what we once had might be worth trying to rebuild, differently, but maybe even stronger. That's a fantasy, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. You broke my trust in the most fundamental way possible. How could I ever rely on you again? You already are, he pointed out gently. You trust me with Lily. You trust me with your hotel, your dream, your creation. Maybe trust, like most things worth having, can be rebuilt over time. I turned away, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze and the dangerous possibilities his words stirred. It's not that simple. I didn't say it was simple, Charles replied, not following me but remaining where he stood. Just that. It might be possible. If you wanted it to be. Did I want it to be possible? The question reverberated through me as I moved back to the kitchen counter, putting physical space between us. Part of me, the hurt, angry part that had nursed betrayal for 6 years, immediately rejected the idea. But another part, one I'd tried to silence for months, whispered that the man standing in my living room was not the same one who had walked out, that people could indeed change. That second chances, while rare, weren't entirely mythical. I need time, I said finally, turning back to face him. This isn't a decision I can make standing in my kitchen on a Saturday afternoon. Charles nodded, acceptance and understanding in his expression. I've waited 6 years, Eliza. I can wait longer. He glanced toward Lily's room. For both of you. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of my phone buzzing on the counter. I glanced at it reflexively, Natalie's name flashing on the screen. You should get that, Charles said. It might be important. I hesitated, then answered. Natalie, what is it? Her voice came through, tense with stress. I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but we have a situation. A pipe burst in the east wing, different from the one before. It's bad, Eliza. Really, bad. I closed my eyes briefly, centering myself. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Call the same restoration company we use for the 4th floor. Already done, she confirmed. The maintenance team is here, but what? They're saying. They need Charles. Something about the main shutoff valve being tricky. I glanced at Charles, who was watching me with concern, clearly having gathered there was a problem at the hotel. He's here, actually. We'll both come in. After ending the call, I quickly explained the situation. Charles was already moving toward the door, professional mode engaged. I'll head there now, he said. You arrange for Lily. I can handle the initial response. The easy way he shifted into problem solving, prioritizing my hotel's needs without complaint despite it being his weekend with Lily, struck me forcefully. This was not the self-centered man who had left me for a younger woman. This was someone who understood responsibility, who put others' needs before his own. I'll call Patricia, I decided, already dialing. She can watch Lily until we sort this out. Charles nodded. Tell Lily I'm sorry about the Science Museum. We'll do it next weekend. 20 minutes later, with Lily safely delivered to Patricia's care, I arrived at the Monarch to find chaos in the East Wing. Water had flooded the main corridor, and staff were frantically moving guests and belongings to dry areas. I found Charles in the utility room, soaked to the knees, directing a team of maintenance workers with calm efficiency. He glanced up as I entered, relief evident in his expression. Main valves shut off, he reported. We've isolated the problem to a junction box in the wall between rooms 118 and 120. The good news is it's a much smaller area than the previous burst, only 6 rooms affected. The bad news? I asked, already mentally calculating the cost. It's an older pipe section, he explained. We'll need to replace more than just the broken segment to prevent future issues. I nodded, trusting his assessment without question. Do it, whatever it takes. For the next several hours, we worked side by side managing the crisis, Charles handling the technical aspects, while I dealt with displaced guests and administrative issues. We functioned as a seamless team, anticipating each other's needs and complementing each other's strengths, just as we once had in our law school study groups and early career challenges. By evening, the immediate crisis was controlled. The affected rooms were drying out, guests had been relocated, and the damaged pipe section was scheduled for replacement the next day. In my office, reviewing the damage reports, I looked up to find Charles in the doorway, still in his water-stained clothes, exhaustion evident in the lines of his face. You should go home, I told him. Get some rest. You've done more than enough today. He nodded, but made no move to leave. What about Lily? Should I still take her tomorrow? Or would you prefer to reschedule? Patricia said she's happy to have her overnight, I replied. So if you're free tomorrow, you could still have your Sunday together. Thank you, he said simply. Then, after a brief hesitation, and us, Eliza? Our conversation from before? I set down my pen, studying the man before me. This newer, humbler version of Charles who had stepped up today without complaint, who had put my business needs above his personal plans, who had worked tirelessly alongside staff he once would, have considered beneath him. I still need time, I said honestly, but today helped. Seeing you like this, how you've changed, how we worked together, it felt right. He finished when I hesitated. It felt right. Like we were partners. Again, the word hung between us, partners, with all its implications and possibilities. Maybe we start there, I suggested cautiously. Partners in parenting Lily, partners in making the Monarch successful. And then, we see. The smile that spread across Charles's face was genuine and without reservation. Partners, he repeated. I'd like that. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Charles? He paused, looking back. Thank you, for today, for everything. He nodded once, understanding all I wasn't saying. Always, Eliza. That's one promise I can keep. After he left, I sat in my office looking out at the hotel that had been my salvation after Charles walked out, the empire I'd built from my broken dreams. I had created the monarch as a testament to my independence, a proof that I didn't need the man who had betrayed me. Yet, somewhere along the way, the luxury hotel I'd designed as a fortress against hurt had become something else, a place of unexpected second chances, where a disgraced lawyer could redeem himself one fixed pipe at a time, and where a woman who thought her heart was permanently closed might find herself reconsidering. Partners. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was a beginning, a word bridging past and future, acknowledging both what we had lost and what we might, with care and time, rebuild. Outside my window, the hotel's signature monarch butterfly sign illuminated the darkening evening. Transformation, I thought. From crawling caterpillar to magnificent winged creature, nature's most elegant second act. Perhaps humans, too, deserved the chance to emerge from their darkest moments transformed. Perhaps the man who now scrubbed toilets in my hotel with humility and dedication was not the same man who had left me when I needed him most. And perhaps I, too, had changed, grown stronger, yes, but also wiser. Wise enough, possibly, to recognize that sometimes the most unexpected paths could lead back to where you were always meant to be. Not the same as before. But maybe someday better. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.